Before we get into these Monday Minutes, I wanted to give a shout out to Derek Rayner. Derek is a recent graduate of the CFC mentorship program, which is a mentorship program that we run. And he recently got offered a job from the Altus Group as a real estate valuation analyst for commercial real estate. That is awesome. Now, Derek has a background in economics, but did not really study commercial real estate at all until going through the program. So we're really happy about that. Congratulations. Also, if you're interested in learning more about the mentorship program, we just opened it up for the July, or I should say Q3 program. So you can find more about that at cfcmentorshipprogram.com. Click apply now. And my partner, Adam Carswell, will reach out to you for an introductory call. Now, one of the things we talk about in this mentorship program is really setting the tone of calls that you get on. When you get on the phone with someone, the first thing that they're trying to figure out is whether or not you're a senior person in the company or if they know what they're talking about. It's just human nature because truthfully, we really don't have a lot of time on this planet, and you don't want to be wasting your time talking to someone that's not going to be able to help you accomplish your goals, to be blunt about it. Also, we're wired to make decisions about who you're interacting with on a split-second basis because historically speaking, our DNA's survival depended on making those decisions correctly in order to avoid danger, most importantly. So today we're going to talk about two critical things that I think really can set the stage for a solid call. And it's becoming more and more important because the more business that's done via technology and other than in-person meetings, you essentially have less senses by which to establish a connection with someone. So on a call, for example, it's just the sound of your voice. It becomes more and more important to really knock that one sense that you have out of the park. So one of the most critical suggestions that we can talk about when getting on a call is dictating the structure of the call and establishing the call's endpoint within the first few seconds of a call. So there's a lot of reasons to do this. We'll talk about it in a second. So when you jump on a call with me, usually the first few seconds sounds like this. Hey, this is Hunter with ASIM Capital. Is now still a good time for you? Yes? Okay, great. All right, perfect. So I've blocked us from 11:30 to 12 p.m. Pacific time, and then I have to jump off because I have another call right when this one ends. So if it's okay with you, I'll jump right into it. And they usually say yes, and I say, okay, perfect. And then I outline the structure of the call. First, I'd like to learn a little bit more about you. Then I can explain more about my company and how we fit in the marketplace, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you have. So that right there has obviously established the structure of the call, but most importantly, it's established an end time of the call. People really do not want to feel like they're drawn in to some endless pitch that there's going to be a lot of rambling and you don't really know it's going to end. And number two, it also establishes that you have a call right after this. Now, if you don't have a call right after this, in fact, if your schedule is completely blank, number one, you should fill your schedule up. It doesn't necessarily need to be with calls, but you should have something to do right after this 30-minute call takes place. And whatever that is, if you don't want to say it's a call and you don't really have a call, which I understand that, you need to say, right after this call, I have to get back to doing this because we're on a time budget because of this. So that establishes that the end of the call is coming, but also that, your time is valuable and that you take your time very seriously and hold it in high regard, but perhaps more importantly, that you take their time seriously and hold it in high regard. The fact that someone is willing to jump on a call with you, it shows that they're interested in the product. It's not something they're doing out of favor, but you need to understand that this is a business transaction, and establishing that credibility up front, meaning that you have done this many, many times, even if it's your first, is really, really important. The second piece of this is vocabulary. Generally speaking, the most recognizable difference between someone who really knows what they're talking about and everyone else is their vocabulary. Yes, it is true that just because you have a good vocabulary on a particular niche does not mean that you know what you're talking about, but it can get you extremely far, going back to that kind of paleo brain, that caveman brain. Those split-second decisions based on, is this person worth my time or not? Vocabulary can be one of those things that's communicated even prior to the actual meaning of what the person is saying. In fact, there are many scientists out there that believe that humans' ability to create change and engage with language is one of our most important differences between us and every other species in the world. This is how you get things like concepts and lineage and history. And yes, it is true that you can teach some monkeys sign language, and they may teach it or some of those sign language signs to their children, but those children usually don't teach it to their children. So it's basically just a human characteristic to a certain degree. No need to email me about this topic. I understand there's some gray area here in terms of what a quote language is. Now, getting back to the main point. If you are struggling with wrapping your head around some of the language which you've heard used on this program or other people that are having high-level conversations, one strategy that I think is really useful is to identify someone with a really great vocabulary. Listen to them speak for an hour and write down, if you're listening to a podcast, write down all of the words that are high level and sophisticated sounding words and start to incorporate those words into your day-to-day vocabulary. One of our guests, one of our operating partners is Ryan Smith from Elevation Capital. He has an extensive vocabulary and he is really a brilliant public speaker. So if you're interested in learning the language of the most sophisticated level, I would suggest going to our podcast, listening to episode 16, which is Investing in America's Most Underappreciated Asset Class with Ryan Smith. Just sit there, listen to it, sit in front of your computer, and write down the words that you can identify as being sophisticated sounding vocabulary words and start to use them in your day-to-day. And of course, at the beginning, you'll probably misuse them. But just using those terms and familiarizing yourself with those terms will get you very, very far. So doing the combination of setting the structure of the call, establishing an end time, and knowing the words to use to make sure that the people you're listening to and talking with understand that you're communicating at a high level, that's going to get you very, very far. Now, it is true that sometimes you may need to dumb that down a bit. And if you're trying to use words that you don't fully understand, that's fine. But in certain circumstances, you may be talking to someone that also does not understand those words. And so in that circumstance, you can turn it down. But I will say this, you can always turn it down. If you don't know how to get to that sophisticated level, it's going to limit you in terms of things like your investment size, dealing with investors that can invest millions of dollars. And so you don't want to put a ceiling on that, especially if it's just the difference between completing this exercise or not. So like I said, go ahead and listen to episode 16. Write down all the words that you feel are sophisticated and make sure to set the structure and the end time of your calls. You'll be well on your way to making some serious moves. All right, listeners, you know the routine. This show is all about learning, making wise investments, and protecting and growing your capital. So if you're interested in these topics, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Of course, if you've already enjoyed a couple of great episodes, don't be shy. Leave a review. It really helps the show's visibility. And lastly, if you're an accredited investor and you're interested in learning more about our investment opportunities, the types of deals that I personally invest in, go to asymcapital.com. That's ASYMcapital.com. Thanks a lot.